Hello, I'm Anita. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be learning how to make a daisy bracelet. This is a pattern that I have from an old paperback book of mine called The Beaded Bracelet 2, and that's a book that was written by Yvonne Rivero. Very old book, and this pattern's been around for a while. So just a quick glimpse of what you're going to be needing today. I'm using 6-pound Fireline, although in the pattern it says you can use Nemo size D. If you're using Nemo thread, they do recommend that you wax the thread. We're also going to be needing a sharp pair of scissors. I'm using a size 10 beading needle, and you want to use a bead stopper or some kind of spring coil like this is what I use for my bead stopper to put at the end of the thread. And you're going to be needing a pair of round nose pliers, 2 different flat nose pliers, and a pair of wire cutters. For the actual materials, you'll be using 4mm fire polish beads today, 6mm fire polish. I've got those in a light green, and the 6mm are in a topaz color. And you're also using 11/0 seed beads. You'll need a lobster clasp. I've got a 4mm O-ring, 2 wire guards, a 6mm O-ring, an extender chain, and a head pin for my dangle, and a little 3mm pearl to put at the end. So this is everything you're going to need. The exact measurements and counts will be in the description box at the end of this video. So if you want to take a peek at that, just click more on the intro, and the description box will open up and give you the list of materials with the exact measurements that you need. So let me clear my area and we'll get started. All right, first of all, you're going to need about 2 yards of your beading thread, and I'm using 6-pound Fireline today. So once you get your needle threaded, you're going to leave about a 7 or 8 inch tail, and I'm using one of these spring holders to clamp my thread, or you can use a stop bead, whatever works best for you. So once you do that, we're going to string on several beads here. So the sequence of the beads you're going to start adding on your needle will look like this. You're going to need 3 11/0s to start, 1 4mm and 11/0, a 4mm and 11/0, a 6mm and 11/0, and a 4mm. So that's what you should have on your needle, like that. So we're going to bring those all down to your stop bead, like that. See if I can get that to where you can see it. For your next step, you're going to pick up an 11/0, a 6mm, an 11/0, and a 4mm, like that. You're going to repeat adding 11/0, 6, 11/0, 4 until you get the length of the bracelet that you want. Pop these on. I'll pick up another sequence. So you're picking up an 11/0, a 6mm, an 11/0, and a 4mm, like that. So repeat that step until you have the length of the bracelet that you want to make. In this particular pattern, I believe this is going to be a 6 to 6.5, maybe 7 inch bracelet. So I'm going to be adding this sequence of 11/0, 6mm, 11/0, 4mm until I use all of my 6mm fire polishes here. And the total number of 6mm fire polishes I'm using is approximately 11 pieces. So I'll string one more on with you, and then I'll send you on your way to do the rest of them. So you're picking up an 11/0, a 6mm, an 11/0, and a 4mm, like that. So continue in that pattern, like I said, until you have the length you want, and you'll be ending in a 4mm fire polish. Now the number of fire polishes I'm using today is approximately 49 pieces. So 49 of the 4mm and 11 of the 6mm. Okay, so go continue doing that pattern and I'll meet you back. Okay, I'm coming near the end here to my last two 6mm fire polishes. So I'm picking up an 11/0, 6mm, and 11/0, and a 4mm. Just make sure you don't miss adding any 11/0s in between like that. Otherwise you'll have to pull your work apart and backtrack. So I'm picking up an 11/0, 6mm, 11/0, and a 4mm. And that's what I have so far. So if you're curious as to what length this is so far, it's approximately a little over 6 inches. So this is going to end up being about a 7-inch bracelet by the time you get done adding your clasp, and you'll have an extender chain to make that even longer if you need to. So if you need a shorter bracelet, just leave off a couple of these last two sections here. You just want to make sure that your bracelet ends in a 4mm fire polish, because that's where you need to work on the next step. Our next step, we're going to be adding the first half of our clasp on this end. So just bring your beads down to your stopper here and just make sure, like I said, you want a 7 or 8 inch tail. So from here, I'm going to pick up 3 11/0 seed beads, like that. I'm using a wire guard, so I'm going to pick that up like that. Bring that down. Now I'm going to go back through my wire guard like this. Make sure that thread falls in the channel. I'm going to pick up 3 more 11/0s, like that. And I'm going back through the 4mm fire polish, the 11/0, and the 6mm fire polish, like that. So pull your thread through. And that's the end of my bracelet. So we'll be coming back through that, and I'll be adding the O-ring and lobster clasp later. So that's where we're at so far. For our next step, you're picking up an 11/0 seed bead, you're going to go through the 4mm like that. Pull your thread. And that's going to place that 11/0 in between the 4 and the 6mm. It's going to be a little wonky at first, so just don't worry about it. Just kind of keep your work snug. So your next step is going to pick up another 11/0 like this, and we're going to pass our needle through the 6mm fire polish like that. So that's what that looks like. So I'm going to repeat this again. Pick up an 11/0, go in through the 4mm fire polish. Like that. Pick up another 11/0 and go through the 6mm fire polish. Just the 6mm. So you're basically just adding a second 11/0 to border each of these beads like that. So you're going to continue in this manner all the way to the end. You're going to pick up an 11/0, go through the 4mm, pick up another 11/0, and go through the 6mm. Very easy pattern. You're going to repeat this step until you're coming out of the last 6mm. So I'll meet you when we're about here. One thing I want to mention as you're adding these and pulling these, you want to pull snug but not too tight. You don't want it to buckle because you want it to have some fluidity. So just try to keep it snug, but don't pull it too tight because you don't want it to buckle. So continue adding and I'll meet you back shortly. Okay, I'm coming down to the end here, picking up a 11/0, going through this 4mm just before my last 6mm. Right there. Pick up one more 11/0, and this is my last 6mm right here. So that's what you should have so far. I'm going to take this stopper off and come down a few here because I need to be able to reach these. So for our next step, we're going to be passing our needle through the next 4 beads. So that means you're going through the 11/0, the 4mm, the 11/0, and the 4mm, like that. Just pull your thread. So we're just setting ourselves up to do the other end of the clasp. So that's where you should be coming out of. You should be coming out of the 4mm bead right there. So now we're going to add 3 11/0s. So pick up 3 11/0s. The other end of our wire guard, pop that on. Now we're going to bring our needle down the other side of the wire guard like that. Just make sure your thread goes in that channel. And now we're going to pass our needle down through the 3 beads on the other side. So with your needle coming in this direction, go down through these 3 seed beads right here like that. Pull your thread. And that's going to seat your wire guard on the other end. And if your thread comes out of the channel like mine just did, you want to make sure you correct that. We'll pull that back up. Pull the thread. So that's what it should look like. A little wonky right now because we have to go back through this. But that's what you should have so far. So for now, we're going to leave that tail thread alone. We'll be dealing with that later. If it gets loose, just pull on it a little bit and that'll tighten it back up. So for our next step, we're going to be bringing our needle through the next 6 beads. So coming out of this 11-0, we're going through the 4mm, the 11-0, and the 4mm, then the 11-0, the 6mm, and the 11-0. And it doesn't matter which 11-0 you go through, like that. Pull your thread. So you should be coming out of an 11-0 just before that next fire polish. All right, for our next step, we're coming out of this 11-0 here. We're going to be picking up 3 more 11-0s, like that. Then we're going through this next 11-0. Then you're going through the 6mm and the next 11-0, like that. Pull your thread, and that's going to place those 11-0s around the 4mm fire polish, like that. So we're going to repeat that step, picking up 3 11-0s. We're exiting this 11-0 here. We're going into the next 11-0 and 6mm fire polish and an 11-0, like that. And it doesn't matter which one you go in. We're eventually going to be going through both of them, so just pick whichever one looks good and pull your thread. So now we're going to repeat that step, picking up 3 11-0s, exiting this 11-0. You're skipping the fire polish and you're going through the 11-0, 6mm, and an 11-0, like that. So repeat that step where you're picking up 3 11-0s, exiting this 11-0, going passing the 4mm into the next 11-0, 6mm, and 11-0. And you're going to continue doing that until you're coming out of this last 6mm here. So I'll meet you when we get to this point. So go ahead and continue and try to keep your work fluid but not too tight. So see you shortly. All right, so we're coming near the end here, picking up the last 3 11-0s, coming out of this 11-0, front of that fire polish, going in through the next 11-0, going through that 6mm, and I'm coming out of that 11-0 right there. So that completes that step, and we'll go on to the next step. So for our next step, we're going to reinforce our wire guard on this end. So with your needle coming out of that 11-0, go ahead and pass your needle through the 4mm to kind of sneak it in there. We're going through the 3 11-0s and one side of the wire guard, like that. And we're just reinforcing at this point. Bring this around, go through the other side of your wire guard, through the 3 11-0s, the 4mm, and the 11-0, like that. Pull your thread, make sure that seats on your channel, like that. Now we're going to bring our needle through the 6mm and through the 11-0 that's at the end here, before that blank area on that 4mm. So you want that needle coming through that end 11/0 that's around that fire polish like that. Pull your thread through. So now we're going to start completing this other side by doing the same thing we did on this side. So we're picking up 3 11/0s, going down through the 11/0 on the other side and the 6mm, and then through the 11/0 at the end of that 4mm like that. Pull your thread through. And that's completing the circle around the 4mm bead like that. So we're going to do that again. Pick up 3 11/0s, exiting this 11/0, going into the 11/0 on the other side of that gap, and the 6mm, and the 11/0 that's near the blank area of the fire polish like that. Pull your thread. And don't worry if it's not perfect, because you're going to be adding some other beads. But that's what it's going to start to look like. You're completing the circles here. So go ahead and continue that same step until we get to the end, until you're coming out of that last 6mm fire polish. So you're picking up 3 11/0s, going in through 1 11/0, through the 6mm, and then through the next 11/0 that's available. And then I'll meet you back. All right, we're coming near the end here. Picking up my last 3 11/0s, exiting this 11/0, going in through the 6mm and the 11/0 at the end, like that. And this is another step of the bracelet. And there's more to add. But you could make it very simple, just like this. If you wanted to stop here, you could certainly do that, and this would make a very dainty bracelet. But I'm going to keep going, and I'll show you what's next. So we're going to be reinforcing this side of the wire guard. So we're going to be bringing our needle through the 4mm, 11/0 4mm, going through all the beads and your wire guard like that. And we're coming down the other side. Bring your needle around this side of the wire guard, going through all your 11/0s, your 4mm, 11/0, 4mm, go through the next 11/0 and 6mm. Just pull that through. Make sure your thread positions correctly, like that. Now we want our needle coming out of the 4th 11/0 from the end here. So you're going to go in through this first 4 11/0s like that. So your thread should be coming out just before that 11/0, like that. For our next step, we're going to start adding fire polish beads, the 4mm size. So with our thread coming out of this next to the last 11/0 here, we're going to pick up 2 4mm fire polish, like that. Now we're coming through these next 3 11/0s like that. So you're skipping the 6mm and that 11/0, and you're going through these 3 11/0s. And that's going to position the fire polish outside of your 6mm bead like that. So we're going to pick up 2 more 4mm. You're exiting that 11/0 there in between 2 from the end. So now we're going to bring our needle in through not this 11/0 but the next 11/0, going through the next 3 like that. Pull your thread. Do that one more time and I'll send you on your way. So pick up 2 4mm. You're exiting this 11mm here just before that one. You're going to skip the 11/0, 6mm, and 11/0, and you're going to go through the next 3 11/0s like that. So that's what it's starting to look like. So continue that pattern till we get to the last one, and I'll meet you back. Okay, so we're coming near the end here. I've got 2 6mm left, so we're going to be adding just 1 more of these, picking up 2 4mm, exiting that 11/0, skipping this 11/0, 6mm, 11/0, going in through the next 3 11/0s like that. So that's what you should have so far. So now we need to get our thread to the other side. So we're going to be going back up through this 11/0, your 6mm, 11/0, 4mm, and those 3 11/0s and your wire guard. If you can do it all in one shot, go for it. If you can't, do 1 bead at a time. It's a little easier if you can get it all in one swoop though. So pull your thread. And we're just bringing our thread over to the other side. The advantage is that you're also reinforcing that. So it's going to be a very strong bracelet. So bring your needle down the other side through the 11/0s, your wire guard and 11/0s, and your 4mm 11/0. And we'll go this far. Go ahead and pull that through. Make sure your thread seats correctly, like that. So now we're going to advance our needle till we're coming out of the 4th 11/0 from the end. So you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4. So go through, you can go through 2 at a time if that's easier. Then the next 2. Like that, and that's setting us up for the next step. So as you can guess, we're going to be repeating what we did on this side. So I'll do the first one with you. Picking up 2 4mm like that, exiting this 11/0, you're going to skip the 11/0, 6mm 11/0, and you're going to go in through the next 3 11/0s like that. And pull your thread. And repeat. So you're going to do that all the way to the end, picking up 2 4mm, skipping that 11/0, 6mm 11/0, going through the next 3, and continue. And then I'll meet you near the end. All right, I'm coming down to my last 2 fire polishes, picking up my 2 4mm, exiting this 11/0, skipping that 11/0, 6mm, and 11/0, and going through these next 3 11/0s. So that's what you should have so far. We're almost done. So our last step is basically just finishing up these threads. So I'm going to bring my thread around and you can do this any direction you want. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. I'm going to come around in reverse direction because I've already reinforced this twice. It'll be too difficult to get back through those beads. So just advance your thread back the other way. We're going to tie a couple of knots. So I'm going to do a half hitch knot right here by coming under a thread bridge. Pull your thread till you have a small loop, and then pull your needle through that loop and pull your thread. Pull that tight. And just come through a few more beads. It doesn't matter which way you go. I'm going to go down this way actually. I want to go through the 6mm like that. I'm going to do another half hitch knot down here. Pull my thread, and I'm just going to advance my needle through a few more beads like that. Whichever way you want to go. And I'm going to clip this thread. That's pretty secure. So now I'm going to take my thread stopper off because that's not going anywhere. I'm going to thread this end onto a needle and do the same thing. Just bring your thread back through, tie a couple of half hitch knots, and then snip your thread, and I'll meet you back. Okay, doesn't that look beautiful? You know, this is a beautiful bracelet, but if you wanted to, you could probably make it longer and turn it into a necklace as well. You could extend this because it drapes beautifully, and you could just add some chain, and that would make a great necklace too. So you could make a matching pair of earrings as well by making one of these components. Make a whole set. So now we're going to get our clasp on. So I'm going to start by grabbing one of my 4mm jump rings. And this one's already open, so I could just pop that on. One end of my wire guard. Grab my lobster clasp. Put that on as well, like that. And then close that. Just make sure you don't have any gaps. That looks pretty good. So that's one end of my bracelet. Now we're going to do the other end. And on this end, I'm going to put extender chain. So that way, if anybody with a larger wrist would like to purchase this, I'll have that flexibility. So taking my O-ring, put my lobster or my O-ring on my wire guard and the end of my extender chain. And then just close that nice and secure. And I'm going to add a little dangle on the end using a ball tip head pin like that. Let's see if I can straighten this out. It's a little bent. There we go. Just pop that on like that. I'm going to take a flat nose plier. Just kind of bend that 90 degrees like that. Now I'm going to take round nose pliers and I'm going to pull that towards me like that. Rotate my pliers towards the table, then pull this down and towards the back like that. So now I'm going to slip that on the end of my extender chain before I close that. And now I'm going to wrap that wire. So using another pair of skinny pliers like that, just hold on to that. Then pull this wire towards you and down as close as you can. Try to get at least a couple of wraps. Doesn't have to be perfect. That should be good enough. And now you're going to clip the end of that wire. So using some flush cutters, clip that as close as you can. And then I like to use a skinny pair of pliers because you want to push that rough edge in so it doesn't get caught on anything or scratch anybody. That should do it. So there you have a beautiful daisy bracelet. And I chose these colors. I wanted something that was kind of vibrant, but that would be easy to show for this tutorial. And it looks really nice. And this is a 7-inch bracelet, but it's extendable up to an 8-inch. So if you need to make this smaller, you can just leave out one of the components. Very easy bracelet to make. You can do that in an afternoon. I do have several of these on my website, so if you're curious to see the other color palettes I've chosen, feel free to take a look at those, and maybe you'll want to go shopping while you're in there. So the link to my website is in the description page. If you click more on the intro to this video, you'll see that, along with a list of all of the things you need and the measurements to make this bracelet, and the links to the suppliers that I typically use. So I want to thank you for joining me. I hope that you subscribe and hit that like button. Please share the link with your family and friends. Have a wonderful week and happy beading.